Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Chakra Way Meditation Podcast. I'm Rosanne, and today's guest, I think, is going to be really interesting, and I'm really looking forward to getting to know her a bit better. I'm with Megan Wagner, who is a therapist, a Kabbalah teacher, an author, and a visionary artist. And this is one of the little threads that we're going to follow. So welcome, Megan. Thank you for coming and being with me today.
Thank you. I'm excited to get to know you and to have a chat today.
Yeah, so where to begin? I suppose the first thing that I usually ask people is how they got into whatever it is that they're doing. What was the path that led you into this type of work? Or maybe we should find out what your type of work is first. Let's not put the cart before the horse, as it were. So yeah, tell me a little bit about the work that you do and what you offer, first of all.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Well, I am a trained psychotherapist, and I obviously have been working with people for 40 years in my practice. I got to the point, though, in my practice where I realized that in order to truly holistically heal, that I wanted to add more tools to my toolkit, to my repertoire,
Mm.
and began doing some deep ritual work and drumming and chanting and then painting. And so I really entered into the sacred arts and then did a lot of research on how the sacred arts over time, through centuries, has helped people heal. So I like to
Mm.
combine now the sacred arts with therapy, because therapy, as we most of us know, can only take us so far.
It's all
And
just up here in the brain, isn't it? It's relying on
well,
the mind to work it all out.
a
Yeah.
lot of times it is. So I was really
Mm.
trained as a holistic Jungian therapist, and I always appreciated that. And yet, when I started to do ritual work, I realized that you could move a lot more material a lot more quickly. You could, really clear trauma a lot more quickly if you used ritual and drumming and singing and movement and, many of the sacred arts. So the nature of the work I do is that I'm a therapist by trade, but I do a lot of teaching and a lot of goddess work with, especially with women in the divine feminine. But I
Mm.
always include my drumming, my chanting, and my ritual.
Wonderful. So if I was to come and see you, expecting you to just be a sit down opposite me and let's talk about your stuff type of therapist, I'm going to have a bit of a shock, aren't I?
Well, people who
So
come to me know that
they
they're going
know.
that
Yeah,
they're
of
going to
course
get
they
more
do.
more healing tools. Yeah.
And so obviously you started off, so that you've kind of almost answered the question as to like how you got into this, because you started as a classical therapist and then realized that you needed more tools.
That's true.
And so what and it's always interesting to know what was it that caught your eye, what was it that, and why was it that particular modality? You know, you've talked about quite creative things. You talk about sound, chanting and drumming, and then art, which is, creative. So I love that because that for me, that's like, that's incorporating the throat chakra, third eye, root, foundations. It's really accessing those really juicy areas of our energy centers. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I also was a very deeply spiritual person as I was growing up, and my family. I grew up in a Jewish and Christian household, and we celebrated things like Hanukkah and Passover, but we didn't have any sort of official religious education, which I'm actually really grateful for. But I was a
Mm.
deeply spiritual person, and I began having third eye spiritual experiences when I was very young, 12. I started to have visions, and that kind of continued all the way through college. And it was a little frightening just because there were no people around me that were able to talk with me about seeing auras, light around people's bodies, and things like that. So
This is such a common thing
I
that
know.
people, who are really open, they start having these things and they're like, well, as a child, I just thought everybody had this. And then I realized that actually I was going to get locked up if I told people, or, sent off to the, and people would shun me because I couldn't talk about it. And thank goodness that nowadays we live in a world where, yes, some people will go, what? That's a bit woo-woo, it's a bit weird. But there are a load more people who will be like, oh, that's interesting. Tell me more. So,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah.
Megan, tell me more.
Well, I did have a very interesting vision when I was 24. So I was studying Jungian psychology. I had already trained to be a therapist. And I was lying down one afternoon and I was completely paralyzed lying down on my bed. And then suddenly a movie screen, literally a movie, it was a vision that was on the ceiling of my room. And so I watched it very carefully. And it was a ladder going from earth into the heavens. And there was an angelic figure at the top of the ladder looking at me and showing me these people walking up and down the ladder. Uh, and then a big flash of white light, and the whole vision disappeared. And then I could move again. So it took me quite some time. It took me 4 years to figure out what that vision was. And it was until I was walking through a bookstore. I was moving from California to London because I moved to start a retreat, a counseling center in London. I was walking through a bookstore. I walked past a shelf that said Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, and this book. You know how books jump off the shelf sometimes?
Yes, I do.
A book on Kabbalah jumped off the shelf. I got into the airplane to move to London. I opened the first page, and there was an exact picture of the vision that I'd had.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
how wonderful.
that's actually how I came into this tradition, because it was a book on Kabbalah. The vision that I'd had was a vision of Jacob's ladder with human beings walking up and down the ladder of realization, the ladder of frequency.
Ah.
So I read the whole book on the plane. I closed the book and wondered who this author was. And it turns out he lived 1 mile from where I was landing in London. Okay,
Oh,
this was just a
wow.
crazy synchronous event. So
Yes.
that, my higher self just got me into this Kabbalah group in London. I met my teacher, and that's when all of this started to flower and blossom, because
Mm,
I really found in Kabbalah an incredibly deep tradition that talks about healing from the holistic perspective. So I've been using the Tree of Life ever since.
mm. I know a very scant amount about Kabbalah.
Mhm.
I listened once to, oh, actually, no, I listened to it more, definitely more than once. But there's a beautiful book by Carolyn Miss, or Mice, who you
Thanks.
probably,
Yeah.
Miss, Mace, yes, who you, well, I'm sure will obviously clearly know. And she related the Tree of Life to the chakras. I enjoyed that very much because I found that fascinating, and to the sacraments, which I thought was really interesting because I'm always so interested to see how traditional, so-called traditional religions actually have so much spirituality
Yeah.
from the sort of as an overall, and that's a ridiculous thing to say, Rosanne. It's of course religions have spirituality in them, but how similar the messages are, how similar everything is through. But tell me a little bit, assume that I know very little about Kabbalah, and tell me what Kabbalah is and how it meshes into our lives.
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, there are many books out there that are, for me personally, way too intellectual, because to me, the Tree of Life is a living being, because every single human being is a living tree. And the backbone of the tree is our spine.
Hmm.
And the tree has three systems: the roots, trunk, and branches. And so if you can imagine superimposing a tree inside your body, you have roots, which are the first two chakras,
Hmm.
all
Yeah.
about rooting into home, family, body, grounding, containment, having healthy relationships. The trunk has to do with the solar plexus, heart chakra, and throat, because
Hmm.
it's really about taking a stand for who you are. And
Yeah.
that's your soul's mission. That's the trunk of your tree.
Hmm.
And then the branches correspond to the upper centers, the third eye and crown.
Yeah.
So when you reach your branches up and out to the sky, the stars, heaven, higher self, uh, then you have nourishment that's coming from the top of the tree, from the branches, from spirit, which then nourishes your inner tree. And then
Hmm.
it's also nourished by the ground, by your instincts, and by the earth itself. And then you have your inner sun, your inner soul, which is also an incredible resource. So it fits perfectly with the chakras. And that is what I
Absolutely.
love about this system. And, as a woman teacher, it was challenging for me at first because I had to kind of break through all of those taboos about being a woman, about, being under 40, all of those things that are kind of classic.
Where does the tradition of Kabbalah come from then? It's basically comes from the Judaic, as far as maybe I'm
Yeah,
completely
it
wrong,
does.
but
No, no, no.
yeah.
Yeah, it is the underground river. It's the mystical tradition that underlies Judaism and Christianity.
Mm,
So, you
right.
have Sufism that underlies Islam, but Kabbalah really is the underground mystical river of Judaism, Christianity. And we know that, Judaism and Christianity give you a little, like a remnant of what the actual teachings are. And you really have to search for what's
Mm.
underneath. But I love it because it is a living tradition and it's not about religion at all. It's an inner path of awakening the chakras. That's what it is.
So this is definitely something as you have understood, I know not a lot. It's definitely something that I need to be exploring more because I feel like it would resonate completely. Everything that you've said is completely resonates. And so like when I'm working with the chakras, I know what they hold, I know what they correspond to physically and emotionally and spiritually, and I know how to sort of apply them in order to help somebody heal, balance energy, etc. How do you apply Kabbalah in your life? What are the actual kind of tools other than knowledge?
It is a very practical tradition. So, for example, in my school, I run a Kabbalah school every single week, every Thursday, and we usually have a theme that we follow, and it's very, very practical. So, we'll follow the theme of the true self, which is at the heart chakra.
Hmm.
And if you look at the diagram, I've got a picture of the diagram, so I'll show it to you. But many people have seen the glyph of the tree of life, but they don't know how to apply it. But for
Right.
example, the very center sphere on the tree of life is called Tiferet, which means truth in Hebrew, truth, beauty, and goodness. And that overlays on the heart chakra. So as you go through your day, you want to open up that mindful witness of your Tiferet and then really become conscious of how am I living my soul's truth right now. I often call Tiferet the captain of my ship, so it just makes it really practical. So, for example, I'm going through my day. I want to make sure that I'm at my heart chakra. So I ask myself, who's got the wheel? Does my captain have the wheel? Or has my inner child grabbed the wheel? So there's some very, very practical tools that you can use to keep your chakras balanced and your inner tree of life balanced.
I love that. So
Very
it's a knowing and an applying and an awareness. I mean, so much of healing work for me comes down to awareness. I love to work with in mind, body, spirit. And that mind comes first for a reason, because if you don't have the awareness of what's going on, if you're falling into your patterns, if you're not operating from, as you say, your heart space or from your truth or from your authenticity, then you're in trouble. But being able to catch yourself when you're not doing those things, that's the trick. And I've obviously used the yoga and the body as a big tool in terms. So talk to me about the physical side of your practice, because drumming is pretty physical
Mhm.
and
Very.
chanting also quite physical. So
Mhm.
how do those meld into the work that you do?
Well, when you think about roots, trunk, and branches of a person's tree, if they're
Mm,
in order to get people really grounded and present and rooted in their tree, you want people to be present, right? Not thinking, dissociating, or thinking about things in the past, but to bring people into the present. Things like drumming, things like body prayer, things like chanting, all of those get people into their bodies. So I
mm,
always start, like if I'm doing a weekend seminar on the Tree of Life, we always start with drumming, meditation, grounding, so that people get in their bodies and they feel rooted.
mm,
Because then, of course, then you can bring them up into the trunk. I have a body prayer that goes along with the entire Tree of Life. So you're actually going through like yoga positions and motions. And I find
mm.
that to be really helpful too. But
Yeah.
there are different practices to help people ground in the roots, to help people stand in their trunk, and to help people reach up with their branches, right? Because I'm always going to three levels of the tree.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And keeping them connected. And again, three, the magic number, mind, body, spirit, all of that. There are
Yeah.
so many beautiful mystical and spiritual qualities to that trio, that three thing that happens, which I think is deeply satisfying to us humans. And I don't quite understand why that is, that we find things that come in threes so just satisfying. That's the best word I can, complete. And I suppose, there's the triangle is complete. It feels safe. It feels manageable. It feels memorable. I don't know what that is, but yeah, the mystical side of that, the numbers, is something that I also find
Yes.
really interesting.
It's
Do
very,
you do you use that at all in your work?
well, I don't, yes, there's a whole wing of Kabbalah that is about numerology.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
I don't personally, just because I like to be more practical in terms of the spiritual psychology of the tree.
Mm.
However, I do work with the number 33, which is a complete tree of life. So if you look at the tree of life, can I share my screen so I could just pull it
Please.
up?
Yeah. So
I'm
for
just,
those of you listening, you'll need to go and find us on the YouTube video and you'll be able to see. Hold on, let me
okay, so
just
I sent
allow
you a
that. There you
request.
go.
Okay, awesome. All right, I'm just going to share this diagram. Most people have seen
Oh,
a glyph of the tree of life. Does this look
yeah.
familiar to you?
It does, yes, but it's
Okay,
probably in more detail than I've seen it. I definitely have seen, yeah, this is
yeah.
beautiful.
So this is a glyph of the tree of life that I developed after I downloaded 33 images. As a visual artist, I wanted to create visual images of each one of the spheres. So the spheres are called sephirot on the tree of life, and the pathways. So if you count 11 spheres, think of
Yeah,
those as the fruits on the tree of life. And then there are 22 pathways on the tree.
yeah,
So there are 33 altogether. And 33, of course, is a master number. And it's a master
yes,
number of completion. So
yes,
I call this the light grid, which is the glyph, the sacred geometry of the tree of life that fits right inside your body. So if you stepped into this glyph, you'd feel this web of sacred geometry inside your body.
love
And
that.
so what I did was, over a period of about 15 years, the last 15 years, I mapped different robe images. So I created 33 kimonos or robes, silk robes with big, huge designs on the back that correspond to each place on the tree of life. So you've got the base of the spine here. This is the base chakra, number one, source. The second chakra is two, renewal.
Yeah.
Right here, the pathway between the first and second chakras is nurturing.
Mhm.
Left hip is play, right hip is passion. So you can go through this whole diagram and map out where these places are on the body.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
this is looking beautifully sort of familiar to me.
yes,
It's really beautiful. Yeah.
and it is incredibly healing when you can activate this sacred geometric grid inside your body, because this is the actual spiritual, psychological, and physical template of health that we've been given from this particular tradition, right? The mystical tradition of the West.
Mm.
So what I did was I took this sacred number 33. I wanted to create a completed tree of life. So I created big kimonos, and I have one here to show you.
Yes, please. I was looking at that behind you and thinking how beautiful that was, but I didn't realize it was one of your robes. Oh my God, I'm so excited to see this.
Yeah. So the robes, so I've done 33 robes, and they have now been made into a tarot, like a card deck, so that you can really learn the tree of life. And actually, you don't need to know the tree of life, but you can with the cards. Because,
So it's kind
these
of like
robes,
I
yeah.
was going to say they kind of like oracle cards rather than tarot cards.
Yes, they're oracle cards. Yeah. So
I
I
love an
have
oracle card.
all the images on the cards now. So you can see all 33 images. And
Those are beautiful.
yeah, I just got the card deck in about a month ago. So I'm super excited to start working with them. And
That's wonderful.
all of these beings that wanted to show up and fill out the tree of life, it was just such an amazing 20-year project. Um,
Wow.
so, there are a lot of people who have gotten into the robes. We've done lots of healing. I travel all over the world with them. They've been inside temples and stone circles. I mean, really, like in West Africa, Morocco, Thailand, they've been all over the world.
Wow.
However, not everyone can get into the robes. And so I decided to create this oracle deck that would help people. And now you can get the deck and you can actually, learn the tree of life.
Mm.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome.
And have you got like a little companion book that goes with the cards that
I do. Yeah,
explains so that people can
yeah.
learn?
It's a
Yeah.
book. Yeah, it's called The Alchemist's Code.
Yeah.
And it's a book that corresponds to it has a picture of the card, and then it has an affirmation, it has messages, questions, practical exercises, and
Mm.
also how to clear the shadow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a whole healing it's a whole
I find cards such a fascinating tool.
Mhm.
Whenever I see a client, I'll either pick a card for them before, and I just got a really simple, they're goddess cards, so they relate to real and some imagined goddesses.
Mhm.
So, there's Kali in there and Diana and like, from all different traditions, all these goddesses, and they all hold a different quality. And they never let me down. They are always relevant. There is something so magical about it. In the same way that energy travels everywhere, it's extraordinary how powerful oracle cards can be. Tarot cards are a whole different thing. That if you're
Yeah,
into it, so much respect. I would love to have the patience and the brain space to be able to learn all of that. Um, but as a beginner, as just a complete, somebody who doesn't understand tarot, oracle cards are super powerful and beautiful, and those are stunning. Yeah.
yeah. Thank you. Well, let me show you. I wanted to demonstrate what the robe actually looks like because people they want to know what it is. So,
Yes, please. Oh my God, again, if you're listening, you do need to just go and check out the YouTube video. I'll put the link down in the show notes for you so you can find.
so
Oh, it
here,
goes.
I'll just come right up to the screen.
Oh, those are spectacular, Megan. Look at her. Oh, Megan, that is beautiful. So it's this beautiful woman with holding a bowl, and in the bowl is the earth, and then there's all these leaves and trees, and it's so beautifully graphic on a black background. The most
Yeah,
beautiful colors of pink and green and brown and earthiness,
yeah.
and the world in a bowl. That is so beautiful.
Yeah, thank you. She is the Earth Mother, and
Yes.
and she corresponds to your base chakra. And
Yeah.
so if people need healing for their base chakra, we'll use that robe. They can either sit in it, meditate, lie down, have a shamanic journey.
Mm,
And the beings on the robes, I channeled themselves basically. And then
mm.
it's taken me years to unpack the healing energy they want to give to us. So each one of the robes corresponds to a place on the body. And so you can heal body, you can heal your psyche, you can heal your spirit.
This is a whole beautiful new thing. This is I love that you're bringing in that sense of the body, because in the way that I traditionally work is that, I rely on the body giving the signals as to where it needs healing and where, but actually this is a whole different way to communicate with the body. Usually it's movement or breath or shaking or tapping or chanting, or, there's so many different things that you can do with your body, but to
Mm-hmm.
adorn your body and to
Mm-hmm.
envelop your body in the energy that is
That's
needing
right.
to be healed or balanced or enlivened
Yeah.
is truly magnificent.
Well, it was an idea literally that just came to me. I had this vision to create robes so that people could wrap themselves in the energy.
Yeah.
Now, I also make scarves because the robes are pretty time intensive, but I've made scarves out of each of the designs so that people can wrap themselves in the energy by wearing a scarf.
Yeah.
Now that the cards are done, you can now, that you can use them as icons so that the cards, you can use. So here's the robe, but now you've got
Yes.
the image of the card, and you
Oh,
can
that's so
do
nice. Yeah.
shamanic journeys by just looking at the card and then drumming or listening to some drumming or yeah. So there are many different ways that you can use these, but it is nice when you can wrap yourself in the energy.
Yes, I absolutely love that.
Hmm.
So you're really, I mean, this robe in particular that you've shown me is, to me, that's like the, divine feminine at its most juicy and delicious and powerful. And that's where all of our source energy comes from. Where it doesn't matter how you identify in terms of your gender, that
Right.
divine feminine energy is our root energy, is our source energy.
Yeah.
I'm entranced, really.
One way to think about this is that the divine mother energy really is helpful in order to root and ground our tree of life. So
Mm,
divine feminine is about coming into the body, loving the body, learning how to deeply love self, to love the earth, to connect with creation. That's the roots of the tree. You could
mm,
say divine masculine rules the trunk of the tree, and then the sacred marriage rules the branches of the tree. So that's how
yes.
most mystery schools go. You get initiated into divine feminine and the earth, then you get initiated into your own power, and then you get initiated into the sacred marriage.
Yeah.
So it's another way to think about how to use the cards, how to use the tree of life in a very practical
Mm.
way.
Mm. And it echoes so many of the other traditions that we have. When you say that, I'm thinking of, Kundalini rising, which is Shakti rising up to meet Shiva at the crown, where that divine union happens. There's so many different ways of looking at this. And I'm interested because when you showed me the picture of the graphic that you had, and you had the left and the right sides and left
Yes.
hip, right hip, and we had right shoulder and left shoulder as well. So for me, when I'm working with the body and so on, for me, the left side represents the feminine energy, that's sort of nurturing, healing, supportive, and then the masculine is on the right, and that's more sort of protective and doing and active. Is that still the same within that tradition? I mean, that's not going to shift anywhere, is it?
It is. It is. So when you look at the tree of life, the left hand pillar is the feminine pillar, which brings structure, form, healthy boundaries, receptivity. And the right
Mm,
pillar of the tree is the masculine pillar that's expansive and energetic. And then the central pillar is where consciousness is birthed and developed. So we have these left and right pillars that on the tree of life we're constantly balancing. And so
mm,
one way to do that too with the cards is that there are particular cards that fit on left, right hemispheres of brain, left, right shoulders, left, right hips. And you can use the images on the cards to actually rebalance your energy system.
mm.
It's pretty amazing.
It is pretty amazing. And so in the colors that you chose for all of these, because the colors are beautiful, and I love the fact you did it on a black background. It makes it pop. It's really powerful. So, because colors have vibration, they have frequency in the same way that drumming or chanting has a frequency. Colors have a vibrancy and a frequency. Were you intentional in terms of collecting those colors together?
I was, and it didn't follow a pattern that I was used to. So I just allowed it to come through. So let me show you all the robes at once on a on a slide because
Yes,
then you
let's
can
see
see
this.
all the colors.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah. So
Okay.
this is definitely worth seeing if people can tune in terms of colors because these are all the colors of the robes and you can see all 33 at one time. So they're not traditional colors for the chakras, but they were colors that channeled through because each of these beings, I call them spirit guides, represent different cultures, and they're bringing through different energies. So, for example, you can see here on number 4, play, that is a West African drummer.
Yes.
On number 5, this is Pele from Hawaii.
Yeah.
This number 6 piece is a Thai monk.
Um,
7 is the Amazon jungle. Number 9 is Australian Aborigine.
yeah.
Number 10 is
That's
Shiva and
stunning.
Shakti. 11 is Sekhmet from Egypt. So each each being wanted to be in that particular placement on the tree, and they wanted these colors. I mean, they were very insistent.
Yes, of course they were. They needed to be represented.
Mhm.
These are so beautiful. Can't wait to get my hands on a set of these cards because they feel so powerful.
Mm.
I'm very drawn suddenly to number 24, wisdom. Not that I think I'm wise, but just that energy of the green with the wings. Oh, that's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Hmm.
Oh,
People are
that's
definitely
stunning.
attracted. Yeah. Some people are attracted. Some people are like, oh, I don't know about that. But that's okay because there's a
Mm,
message. There's a message for everybody in each of the cards. And really the beings channeled through, and there's a paragraph on each card where they're speaking directly to you.
wow.
Hmm.
This is a real labor of love to hear that this has taken you 20 years to create these
Yeah, it
through
has.
all of the work that you've done, through all of the, and you started, did you start knowing that you needed to create 33? I'm imagining you probably did.
Well, I started with 7 chakras on the tree of life. So I had 7 robes originally, and I thought, oh, I'm done. This is great. And then I started writing a series of initiation stories for women, and then 5 more goddess robes came through, and I was content having 12. And then it was literally on the summer solstice in 2012, which is, of course, when the whole ascension window opened, and I knew it was an auspicious time.
Mm.
I was spending a month-long spiritual retreat at a place called Dom and Her, which I go to every year. It's a spiritual community
I
in
spoke
Italy.
to an amazing woman who lives there, gosh, her name escapes me in this moment, but she works with plants, listening.
Probably
They're
Tigrila.
musical plants,
Yeah, it could
plants.
be Tigrila or
Yes,
Zigola.
It was Tigrila. That's it.
Yeah,
Yes,
she's a
yes.
friend of mine. So I go to Dom and Her every year, and I've been for 22 years. And so I was there in 2012. And on the summer solstice, I had a whole visitation from all 33 of the guides, and they said to me very insistently, we want you to animate an entire tree of life, and there's going to be 33. So I got the mission to create a whole set.
Wow.
And that's when I filled in the whole entire tree of life.
And do you paint them onto the silk by hand,
Yeah, they're all hand painted.
hand painted?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of blown away by their beauty and their power, actually. I think they're really extraordinary.
Yeah.
And I think that this work is obviously, hopefully, that people have been able to watch this and see these pictures and if they resonate with you. And it's a really interesting thing, isn't it, when you do this work, because I speak to lots of different people for this podcast, and I do that with the mission that there's somebody out there who's going to resonate with everybody. There's somebody for everybody out there in terms of your leader, your teacher, your guide, your whatever. But I really connect with these, and so yeah, shout out to my old client Ellen who who put us in touch. I'm so grateful to her. That's wonderful.
Well, one of the great things about this timing of us talking today is that I'm just about to launch a brand new journey with the cards because they just came in. I'm starting this Monday, July 7th.
Mm.
Uh, and of course, you can start with me next week if people are interested. You can jump in also anytime, but every single Monday at 12 noon Pacific time. So it'll be doable for people in the UK and in Europe.
Mm.
I'll be doing a 33-week journey so that every single week we're working with one of the shamanic guides. And I already have a whole program set up, and it's really for people who want to go deep into each of the 33 beings, and they will give messages, and we're going to create the entire light grid, the entire tree of life over 33 weeks. So one being a week, one card a week, and we'll do shamanic journeying when we meet live every Monday.
Wow. Well, that's quite the offer. That sounds incredible. Yeah, that's beautiful. And so, what other things do you offer? Like, I know because I looked at your website, you've got, courses and events and so on. And those are in-person things or online things. How do you generally work?
Yeah, it's a good combination of both. So I do have a lot of classes online. So I have two big training programs every year that start in January. I
Mm,
always do a Tree of Life 14-week program online, which is accessible to, anyone in Europe and UK. And I also do a Feminine Path of Power, Divine Feminine Initiation Journey for women only.
mm,
And that is also an incredible experience. We use some of the robes, I do storytelling, and that also starts in January. But I have other things going on in the fall. So I have
okay.
a live spiritual psychology class. So people who are interested in learning the tree of life from a deeper psychological perspective, that is a 10-day
Mm,
live program.
mm,
And then, I have this new card deck journey online. And then
mm,
every year I take about 4 international sacred trips. So I'm a traveler. I love to travel and I love to bring groups to different places. So
mm.
I have a lot of travel coming up. Egypt and Damanhur and Botswana and Sacred Ireland, Malta. I mean, there's a lot of trips that I take. So if people are
There
in,
are so many places around the world that hold the most incredible spiritual
yeah,
heritage. And
right.
so yeah, I know about your Egypt trip,
Yeah,
which looks spectacular. But yeah, I've always say this because in part of my course, I talk about the chakras of the world,
yes,
and when I'm talking about the chakras of the world, when I think about them, I'm like, what an incredible trip that would be if you could go to all of those places. Now, I think I've managed to do maybe two. So I've been to Glastonbury and I've been to Ibiza, but that's not really saying much. There's so many other places to go to.
there
Um,
really are.
but tell me about when you travel and why you think that there is this sort of energy to in certain places, because clearly Egypt has the most insanely powerful
Yeah,
energy.
yeah.
How the yeah, we could go on, but talk to me about what you think when you travel as a traveler, as a visitor to these places with the intention of deepening your spiritual connections and so on. What do you find?
Well, it's a great question. There are some places that are massive. I can feel that they're stargates, and where massive amounts of energy either come up from the earth or they're receiving energy from the planets, the sky, the particular energies. So there's always a two-way flow. And
Mm,
oftentimes, there are power places that have these Neolithic, megalithic sites on them,
yeah,
and or pyramids. Excuse me. So I have been actually traveling to a lot of places with pyramids, and there you can feel that there was definitely sacred intention. So I've, do a lot of work in the Yucatan, which has the Mayan pyramids. I do a lot of work in Crete and Santorini. And Crete had an incredible goddess tradition that also has power spots all over the island. You get power spots in South Africa. There are power spots all over Europe. And really, honestly, if you travel through Europe, where all the big cathedrals have been built, they were built over Isis sites or goddess sites.
hmm,
Or if you go to Jerusalem, the Temple Mount is a huge stargate. So there are places
yeah,
all over the world that are, if you're sensitive to energy, you can receive personal upgrades to your system.
yeah,
Um, there's all kinds of things you can do when you travel. But I
yeah.
like traveling with a small group of sacred companions.
Mm,
Yeah, it's amazing what
that's
happens on these trips.
yeah.
And I often do bring my robes. So we wear the robes and we do ceremony in these sacred spaces. So people get the healings they need.
Yes. Oh my Lord. It's all so tempting. I want to jump right into your world, Megan. I do. And come travel with you. It
Yeah.
sounds so, so good. Yeah, I love that. I love that. So let's bring us back to kind of where we started and in Kabbalah and the Tree of Life.
Yeah.
So if someone's listening to this and they go, wow, there's an awful lot of, interesting stuff there, but I don't really know where to begin and I don't really know how to access this. And I certainly can't, I'm not in a place where I can go traveling with Megan or do, whatever. Where do people begin with this understanding of the Tree of Life and Kabbalah?
Yeah. Well, one of the best ways or easiest ways to come into it. So I have a book that I've written called The Awakening with the Tree of Life, and it will take people through the 7 initiation stages on the tree, which correspond to the 7 chakras. And then I bring in a lot of Western mythology, a lot of psychology, a lot of astrology,
Mm,
step by step by step. So that you
yeah.
can get either on Kindle, you can get the paperback, it's on Amazon on demand. So that's very accessible for people.
Mm,
And then
mm,
if you want to go deeper, I would suggest taking my Tree of Life journey that starts every January. And then
yeah.
there's other ways to plug in, during the year.
Mm. And where can we get your oracle cards? Where are those?
Yeah, if you go onto my website,
So,
meganwagner.com,
okay.
and just look under Sacred Robes, it says the Alchemist Code Journey, and people will be able to buy a deck there.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I'm going straight away to see if you ship to the UK, which I'm sure
I
you
do.
do.
I do. Yeah.
Wonderful. So what message would you like to give to my listeners? What sort of parting message of the world that you inhabit, where you find healing and you find, it's clear from speaking to you and spending time with you that you have such purpose in your work for spirituality and everything that you do and helping and uplifting others. Now, not everybody's able to spend their entire life doing this. We have to kind of fit it in around kids and jobs and all of that kind of stuff. A lot of people, and I speak to a lot of people who are really interested in a spiritual journey, but they're like, I don't go there in case I kind of want to run away and live in the woods, or I just don't have, my work colleagues won't understand, or I can't just immerse myself in that, but I'm interested in it. So I want to, I'm not quite sure what I'm asking you for, but I want you to give me some ideas or give the listeners some ideas, people who are interested in this path, some advice, I suppose, on how to proceed.
Well, I know that we're all very, very busy people, and I also know that the negative frequencies, that's what I like to call it. The negative energies are increasing,
Mhm.
so are the positive energies, and so this is the right time for us to be very practical about our spiritual journeys.
Mm,
It doesn't mean we go off into a cave and meditate for 10 years.
yeah.
The tree of life is actually a super practical way of living life so that you can open your entire system and let your energies flow properly inside of you. And that, so for me, it's very, very practical of just being mindful every day of how to center yourself, how to ground and root yourself, how to be present with people, how to be present when you're cooking dinner. And so the tree of life is a mindful internal practice. You don't have to be all heady about it at all, but it's about staying rooted and grounded, staying empowered at your heart center, and then always checking in with your higher self at the root system. Just remembering that I have 3 identities that I can check in with every day. Like
Mm,
my inner child is in the root system. How's my inner child doing? My adult self is in my trunk. Is my adult in charge? And my higher self is in the branches. Can I take a higher perspective? So I use it every day in that way, right? How's my inner
mm,
child doing? I want to love myself. Is my true self in charge, my captain? And can I take the higher perspective right now?
mm.
So very practical.
Yeah.
And and the other thing I love about the tree of life is that it brings positive focus of energy into my being every day
Mm,
so that I am nourishing and nurturing myself first before I give all my power away to others. So it's a way to be very mindful about holding my energy and preserving my
mm,
energy, protecting my energy, so that I can be the happiest and best version of myself.
yeah.
And I can serve and be the best version for everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, beautiful advice. Thank you. Yeah, it's so true. And it's one of those things where you think, oh, I'll do that. Every morning I'll wake up and I'll remember those three things, my root, my trunk, and my branches. And then the day gets away, you oversleep and you don't think about it and you go, oh, damn, and you beat yourself up for not doing it. I believe like it doesn't matter when you remember to do it, just do that little bit of mindfulness and it will just evolve within you to become a completely natural thing that is part of your life, that awareness.
This is true. And I also do recommend in these interesting, chaotic times,
Mm,
people do find some kind of group or sangha that they
yeah.
can plug into once a week because honestly, I don't know what I would do without my Kabbalah group every Thursday.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know what I do without all my yoga classes. That connection where you come together and you just sit together and breathe and just sit in silence or and practice and be is yeah, it's invaluable. I completely agree with you. Yeah.
I also just want to put a plug out there because I have about, I don't know, 200 meditations up on my free. So if people are interested in just kind of perusing through guided meditations,
Oh,
they're
I should.
all from the Thursday night meetings. I take out the meditations that I do and I take them out and put some music under them, and they're up on my website and they're free. And I really want people to take advantage of them because they're very
Mm.
helpful in terms of what we're dealing with today.
Wonderful. Well,
Yeah.
I shall go and have a look at those as well. And I think you can guarantee that most people who are listening to this are enjoying a guided meditation because that's the majority of what this podcast is guided meditations. So yeah, that I will put all of that on the in the show notes so people can find us, can find you and find those meditations. But thank you for everything you've offered us and shown us today. I really appreciate that. It has been a joy to meet you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really, really a great experience. Thank you.